Welcome to Bitcoin Live on the Monday evening with me back by popular demand, I guess. Vesa, welcome to Bitcoin Live.
My pleasure, my friend, to be with you as always. This is going to be, again, a bunch of fun. Let me just tweet this out that we're live now.
Yeah, you got a big following now, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah, the crypto is wild.
Yeah, you started a new department, so let's pull up the logo, which is really cool. Actually, I love the design.
Yeah, it's there's a lot to talk about it. I guess because it's where. Yeah, we've talked about this many times before, how I don't think that the art world is particularly free. In fact, that you probably are more free in the corporate world to be creative than inside of the art world and think outside of the box, the postmodern jail box that people have been put in for since a long time. So much so that they don't even know that they're inside of it anymore.
So we need a new department, the Department of Artistic Freedom.
Well, yeah, because I think in short, depends on how much you have followed the culture wars and how much a person is informed on both sides of the argument and seen what's been happening to media and education and all those kinds of things. If you might have to be a little bit older to understand it easily, unless if you're in the podcasting sphere and kind of aware of things, Joe Rogan and and those kinds of things, then you might not understand, if you're still listening to the corporate and government media, that there's a lot more to the story. And right now, the Trump win, I think the art world is still under the illusion that they're going to be able to skate by this election and its consequences, much like every other time, that they can just remain in their own bubble. And I think this one, it's not going to be no longer the case, because they've, for some miraculous way, the art world has managed to not be affected by the internet since the dawn of the internet. Yeah. Like if you think of like simply this way, like for example, the orbit of Joe Rogan, not only the comedians, but all the kind of people who come on as guests, whether they talk about different kinds of corruption in the food industry or medical industry or whatever is going on in all different kind of conspiracy theory or proven conspiracy versus all the other things, you won't find any of this stuff represented inside of the gallery space at all. None of the topics and let's say the intellectual dark web and the Weinsteins and all whoever's. They're reaching billions of people, but somehow the art world is like, no, none of this exists. We don't, and the cancellation machine and the sort of hush of whenever something is off postmodern script is the cat's fully out the bag. It's like there's an avalanche of what's actually interesting to people and what they find engaging, and none of this is in the visual arts. And the comedians, when the $1 trillion machine really started working during COVID, the comedians sort of rose to the challenge. They didn't cower. They whether it was Dave Chappelle with the trans things or Joe Rogan with the vaccines or whatever, because they were brave, they sort of rose to absolute mega stardom, unlike we've ever seen comedians be before in the history of time. And this has been the very opposite for the visual artists. We're more irrelevant than we've probably been before ever. And it's a lot to do with, I would say, a long time running incentive structure, the education and media and all those kinds of things. But as well as I think we have a pandemic of cowardice going on in a certain way. But the incentive structures are so badly aligned because it's such a difficult profession to make a living that nearly no one manages to do it. Then the incentives inside of the structure of the art world are absolutely terrible. Then the way that it's curated, or the way that you can be participatory in the system, if you say anything off script, then they're going to try to demote you as much as possible. And then there's the social media thing, that if you do things like I do, which is I have classical representations of nudity, but not in a graphic way at all. You could say that if you have bikini pictures, they will show more than my artworks, but they get constantly flagged. So then the deck is really stacked like this. and people are mortally terrified of cancellation. And that's been another thing. So these are all leading to what we're going to talk about with regards to this department of artistic freedom.
Yeah, and you have been talking about this for a long time. We've actually had discussions along these lines for a couple of shows, and I always enjoy them because I'm very much aligned with your views here. But you sort of lead it back to postmodernism, right? That's for you. That's the big culprit. And I think there's also other elements going into it. Where do you want to go? Do you want to sort of unpack that first, or?
Yeah, I suppose because ultimately, this was something that was introduced to me. I've mentioned this before on the show with you, but I was friends with John Anthony West, the rogue Egyptologist, and he sort of woke me up to this concept called the Church of Progress, which is essentially an atheistic or unspiritual movement that everything is constantly going forward. But if you kind of get a little bit knowledgeable on the download on how the French Revolution was done, and what kind of dirty games were being played in order to do a hijacking of power and kind of a Western severance of our spiritual connection. And it became sort of a laughing thing, ultimately, for you to be someone who says that you believe in God, and science and God went their separate ways, even though they originated from Christian monks. And there's that culmination point of the French Revolution that starts to lead us towards the postmodern philosophy, and the French seem to be at the epicenter of a lot of this stuff all the way through to modern times, and that's kind of the thing to raise, that it's counterintuitive to start talking about it as an artist, because, like I said, the stack is against you. And then secondly, the audience is not going to be very easily clued up to it, because you have to go back to the French freaking Revolution in order to start to make sense of it, of how long we've been going down this track. So that listen, like the art sort of Duchamp piss pot whatever show was, it was 1917. It's over 100 years ago that an artwork was presented as a protest art piece and a mockery and a provocation piece inside of a gallery, and now we're still selling a postmodern banana for over $1 million, like it's meant to be shocking. Like it's nothing but a Gen Y lame duck version of something that was done 100 years ago to a much more brutal effect. It's so we're playing these different kinds of silly little games that are very demoralizing, I think, to the Western constitution and your soul. And that's why I had, because I was so inspired by this thing by Elon Musk, this DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, because it's such an insane flame torch to a lot of the garbage that we've been avalanched with for a long time, and all the different speeches that are going on about how you need to uproot a lot of this radical leftism out of the education boards and all these things. And they're like, I've never heard a politician, let alone one going into power, talk about things that I would actually go like, wait, that might actually do something and change the trajectory. That this is kind of inspiring. So I'm thinking that the artists, they would need a similar kind of thing. And I thought about the different kind of values and how to do it and what it would be about. And so, sorry, you went off?
Back, sorry.
What
I
happened?
wasn't plugged in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah. I
Okay,
got a
so
warning, like, make sure that your battery, my battery.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
I thought we might have missed your audio in the recording altogether or something like that.
Oh, no, it's not that bad. No.
Okay,
just,
good. Where was I? That we would need something like this in the art world as well, because so I started thinking about the logo of what it would be, because you have to give the crypto artists, who were the legit thing, who were the first avant-garde in a long time, because they started critiquing the biggest casino in the world, which is the sort of central banking system. They really took it on, and you could say that Andy Warhol took on a lot of taboos and this kind of thing, but in comparison, that's child's play in terms of what you're taking on. So the avant-garde, and of course it was downplayed and kind of washed away as quickly as possible because it's inconvenient. But the logo inside of the Department of Artistic Freedom is made from the $ font. So
okay.
it's a nod towards the crypto artists who started really literally playing with money, and sort of the crypto decentralized place all together. And then what's on the inside of it is this type of expansion of consciousness, because this is, if you think of what the art world really is, what you think the authentic version of capitalism is. The authentic version of capitalism is the free marketplace of ideas and competition, so that it sort of is actually economic. It makes things more impactful and fluent and go in the right way. And of course, that's so convoluted to get today because we have something like surveillance capitalism, or whatever, mixed in with social programs for the rich and crony capitalism for the poor type situation. And people think that capitalism is the problem. It's really not. It's this crazy amalgam of the developed fiat system.
I always say capitalism is on life support, right? It sort of died, or it's in a dying stage, since 2020 or maybe earlier, but
quite possibly earlier, even if not 100 years ago, depending on what you think of.
Yeah. But it still had some life in the 1950s, 1960s, something like that.
But still, so the consciousness expansion part is something to do with how the art world, if understood correctly, it's the free marketplace of creative ideas.
Yeah,
they're meant to duke it out and kind of be. It's the purpose of art is that kind of expansion, because a lot of people say things like, art is expressing emotion and this kind of thing, and I think it's such a superficial, stupid way to put it, because the art world or art itself is an exploration of consciousness, or the exploration of the cosmos, or the logic of God, or what are we, where are we coming from, these kinds of things. And it's like it's a divine mission. But because in the West we've been cut from that source, like I said, from the French Revolution, to such a degree that we don't even think that that is where we should be pointing our focus on when we're doing something like that, then we have a different kind of thing altogether with what people think that art is. And then through that postmodernism and questioning these narratives and making it all into a kind of joke is possible. So it's all downstream from making God a laughingstock, or people's pursuit of this kind of telos or divine enterprise is not acceptable within this realm.
Yeah, I think sort of what you just said about art being about being about feelings and expressing your feelings, which is like a very superficial take on art.
That's what toddlers do.
Yeah. And the equivalent the equivalent of that is to say like religion is only about rituals, right? Sort of.
Yeah. Or that religion is only about us trying to explain away death. And because we're afraid of death, and that's whenever someone says that, then I always know that that's a coward, because essentially that kind of a person has never experienced what it takes to go on a journey enough to see beyond the veil in order for you to understand that death isn't something, that's not the worst thing, and that's not something to be afraid of, and there's something beyond the veil. So usually if someone has to say something like that, like a Richard Dawkins or whatever, that's why they don't do psychedelics, because they're cowards to have the actual the real deal and the experience.
And I think we are also so materialist that we sort of mistake the superficial elements for the real thing, right? So when people look at religion, for example, they see a church or a temple and people doing some rituals, and they sort of mistake that for religion itself, right? But religion itself is much, much more complex and much broader than just the outward signs and symbols and buildings and people. And the same is, of course, with art, right? You got a painting or a piece of music or whatever, and people sort of, people in the West often mistake sort of the material thing for art itself. They don't want to look beyond it, right? They don't want to sort of speculate about what more could it mean. What is it an expression of? What lies beyond it? Like what gives it? What prompts artists to make the art in the first place? What drives these people? And I think in one of your tweets you also mentioned that you need to be aware of the past in order to move towards the future. And I think that is very true. And I think another thing that the French Revolution, but many other developments since then, have sort of dislodged us from the past, right? There was sort of a bifurcation, and basically they said, like, what came before doesn't matter anymore. We've outgrown that phase. We're now grown-ups or mature, and we don't have to look back. And basically, also what you said with Duchamp and the Urinal artwork. I don't know what's called in English.
I think it was called the Fountain or something. So
yes,
Urinal that was just displaced.
But anyway, it's sort of like a puberal rebellion against what came before, and in his case, it was subversive in the sense that it was not what people expected, because art was so serious, so haughty, so lofty, and then he sort of subverted that by being sort of the exact opposite. But now we got stuck in this puberal, endless rebellion against what, right?
Yeah, no one knows what it's. Rebels without a cause, because they wouldn't know what a cause is if it hit them in the face, because they're just so clueless about any kind of being rooted in like a narrative that makes sense. So it's this mental unwellness just manifesting like a screaming little toddler. It's embarrassing for the most part. But hey, could you please put the logo into the screen, and I'll just finish up talking about it, and then we can move on.
Here it is. Here we go.
Yeah. So you see the $sign font, the Department of Artistic Freedom, DAF, and then the central kind of thing about it is this consciousness expansion, what is the free marketplace of creative ideas. Then it's the angel wings has a double meaning. Hey, Bit Savage, nice to have you on the show as well. I'm just explaining the logo of what's going on inside of it. Give me a second to finish up on that one. So then on all the things about the French Revolution and kind of art being separated as well as science from our origin and the faith and spirituality in this kind of way, then it has these angel wings. And those angel wings are also connected to the first purpose of why I thought that this kind of a thing would be important to have, which is that people have been so afraid of this kind of extreme left cancellation machine that if you do step out of script, that then the bomb's essentially going to come after you. And I thought that there should be some sort of a community that would rally behind people who are doing creative things, and they can be postmodernist, or they can be Nietzschean, they can be religious, they can be whatever. Everyone's welcome to come inside to build this kind of thing, but we'd agree that the artistic freedom to do and explore your subconscious and find these things, that why we become artists in the first place, should be a protected profession to this degree that you shouldn't be canceled for going after it, and sometimes not even making a mistake, because that's part of becoming a professional artist. So this is why the wings are there, that it's sort of this, what is the sacred mission of art, is to discover the cosmos, discover the whole thing. Yeah. And then I thought, but that's all super serious, and that's very like, and it feels a bit government and all this kind of thing. So the most free artist that I know, and the one that had the most profound impact on me ever since a kid, was Dali. And his way of approaching art, this kind of subconscious dream world, and mystical, archetypal, conspiratorial, all of the divine things that he's sort of put together as his whole life, and that being a performance as much as the artworks themselves, and then the media and marketing that he brought to a new level of what an artist was able to do, and promote chocolate bars on television and design the Chupa Chups lollipop brand, and all those amazing things. I couldn't think of another symbol that the Dolly mustache to symbolize artistic freedom and the humor inside of this whole thing. What it's meant to be. It's meant to be a joy. It's meant to be fun. But so those things together make up, I think, something quite impactful, because, yeah, it's a serious thing. It's a serious profession. If you're going to try to make a living out of it, good luck, because most people are going to fail. It's just a sad reality of what it is. But then it can't be too serious, because then you kind of negate the point of why you would go into the realm of magic to begin with. So that's kind of all things that are packed inside of this logo. And
personally, I also really like sort of the sunbeam that at the center, the sort of light that sort of spreads out across the wings. I mean, I guess also that's, what you're saying. You have to spread your wings as an artist and expand your consciousness, expand, life itself through art. So that at least that's what I sort of got out of the centerpiece, the sun behind the dove. Which I really like the logo, actually. It's very striking.
Thanks, man. So Bit Savage is a friend. He's the founder of Adore, which is this Ordinal's inscription platform that is now just launching. And we inscribed the first 100 of those logos as a kind of membership badge to come and be among the first 100 builders of the Department of Artistic Freedom. So he's got the platform, and he's got his unique take on things. And please meet Nicolas from Bitcoin Live. And I think you guys also have a lot in common, and hopefully we'll be friends. As well.
I do think Bit Savage might have some technical issues on his side.
Oh, okay.
We can't hear him, and I think his image is stuck.
Yeah, it's frozen.
So I'm not sure if you can hear us, but sometimes logging out and logging back in helps, and also use the Chrome browser. But it might be something else, because I'm not sure if we have
Okay, I'll message him.
But anyway, I love the logo. I love the mission. I think there's a lot there. There's a lot to be fought for. I think it could also be a rallying cry, because there must be many artists. I know a couple like yourself who feel similar. I think it was Joe Rogan who said something along the lines that many sort of artists and people sort of contacted him in order to sort of speak out about these issues because they were afraid to do so themselves. And the same is in with universities, right? With Brett Weinstein and others, they also mentioned that there's many professors who sort of feel strangers in their own departments because they are afraid to speak out or speak their mind because of being canceled or harassed or whatever. And of course, you could also have like a backlash. That's the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about with Trump being Trump. I like his picks. I love RFK on health. I also
Tulsi and Vivek and Elon and the whole crew.
Yeah, I mean
X-Men mutants.
Even Elon Musk in his way, I do worry a little bit about him, but well, actually quite a lot. But I also sort of like his crazy clown-esque attitude, and we wouldn't have won. And I say we,
yeah, like
which reveals
Europe,
my bias.
yet, which is not the case,
Yeah, no, in Europe we haven't won, so to speak. But I do think a win for Trump in America will be a good thing for Europe, even though it will be kind of painful. As you can see right now with these long-range missiles that they okay.
Yeah, that's great to be in Finland at the moment and share a border with Russia and know that we joined NATO and became an official enemy of Russia, and the missiles are flying at the moment. That's very comforting.
Yeah, I find it very interesting that they sort of okayed it sort of right now that Trump is coming into office. You know, I do have so my thoughts about that. But yeah, I'm glad I'm not where you are.
Haha.
So,
No, but like he's chosen a cabinet, kind of like neocon warhawks, and I think the plan is something like de-escalate the Russian one and then kind of re-engage with China somehow. And there's all kinds of things that are way beyond my pay grade to understand. But what I do understand is that there's now, at least inside of the US, you have a movement where it's now cool to like Trump again,
yeah,
and all the media distortions about it. I'm not saying the guy is perfect by
no,
any stretch of the imagination, there's a lot there to be dug out. But if you, for example, go down the rabbit hole of seeing how very well conscious and aware of the actual substance Obama just said before the elections, that the very fine people on both sides. And then you've seen something like the video that is being put together, where in that same speech he disavows the Nazis and the white supremacists, like
yeah,
thoroughly condemns them, and there's more context to what he said there.
yeah,
And then he's since said it 1,000 times, that
yeah,
all of the white supremacists and Nazis should be condemned, and this is deplorable, and all this kind of thing. He said it 1,000 times, and still the media has run this story, countless times. And then before the election, and Obama knows this very well, he still chose to lie about it in order to try and get Kamala elected. And once you get one of these things that hits you, you go like, hold on a minute, it wasn't true, that was bullshit. Then the sort of stack of cards starts to unravel, and you start to see that maybe something like that has been happening ever since 2015, where there's been a demonization campaign and lawfare and all these things kind of thrown at him. And again, I'm not saying that the guy is squeaky clean. I've no idea, but I do know a cancellation project when I see one. And now at least the American people have woken up to it. But the European media is very much just like listening to the
well,
accuser, which is the
I think
Democratic Party,
they're
and
still in
then
shock.
yeah, but of course they're in shock, because they've only been ever listening to the accuser and never the defender. Because if you the American politics
But they,
landscape is that you have Republicans and you have Democrats, and the only people we've been listening to the Democrats, and they've been lying their asses off for decades now.
yeah, well, that's the point, right? They have been drinking their own Kool-Aid, so they thought like he doesn't have a shot. We're gonna win this hands down, right? I still remember when Kamala was put forward, and there was this whole campaign like, oh my God, she's gonna crush Trump, like he's, it's Trump is he never expected, like it was a brilliant move to put her forward, and they had these campaign rallies that were, yeah, orchestrated, I would say. And
Well,
but
it's been a funny thing to see. So from that point, watching that what Trump is going to do, then all the X-Men mutants who are coming in the wake of all that, and I think it's going to be at the very least quite a popcorn filled coming 4 years, and and quite positive, I think, for the world in many different ways. I think there's a kind of apocalypse that is happening in its actual intended form, which is the lifting of the veil of illusion rather than something that is the end of the world.
yeah, I
It's
think sort of the manufactured reality is falling, it's fracturing, it's falling apart, and people are starting to see truth. I'm not saying that the truth, the way Trump presents it, is the only way forward. I actually do kind of worry about where he might take the country, but I do think like just him sort of helping to burst the bubble, that in itself is good enough, right? So whatever he does, we were going to find out. Proof is in the pudding. If he actually, is pro free speech, and if he actually does put a broom to all these departments and cuts them down to size. I hope not too much, by the way, because you do need institutions to function, and some things. I mean, if we had a true free market, it would be different, but we don't really have a free market. We have like a monopolist oligarchic system at the moment. So if you remove all government and all institutions right now, you sort of give it to these behemoths like perhaps Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, to name two.
Yeah, I like both of them. I really do think that, as much as there is chaos, when I listen to them, they make a lot of sense, and I'm realizing that there's a lot going on in the intelligence and courage and all those kinds of things in a different kind of way that I wouldn't mind knowing them. I wouldn't mind being a part of whatever that is from an artistic standpoint. I think that's where the game is at the moment. Sure, there's something to worry every time, but this is the best that I've seen any kind of candidates to run a country for a long time as a kind of coalition of what they stand for. So if you put in line what's to worry about in terms of what the machine was that was going to work through Kamala and what these guys are going to do, it's an entirely different world altogether. And I would take this one.
Yeah, me
like
too, right? I mean, the alternative was you lose, and this is a gamble, right? We might still lose, but at least it's a gamble, and there will be more freedom in one way or the other. There is already more freedom
and merit and sensible and all these different kinds of things, as opposed to more radical left DEI kind of war machine that is like this thing that has been going on. So it's but I want to acknowledge something, which is the insanity of me saying something like this out loud as a visual artist.
Yeah,
to most people who would be listening to them, to us right now, this would be as much as of a shock as the liberal media is about what happened in the election if they were inside of their own bubble. I think the whole of the art world has been in this kind of a bubble for a long time, or if anyone hasn't been, they've been really afraid to say anything like it, because this is so beyond the pale for let's say the screaming kind of whatever perspective from the postmodern view that we're used to getting from the art world, that they're going, oh, I'm so happy that they canceled him and they've kept him on the sidelines, because these are the kinds of beyond the pale opinions that he has and what he sort of represents. And I go like, yeah, that's kind of, I've come out of a gradual Stockholm syndrome with this kind of thing, because I've said it many times that I've benefited a lot from different kind of postmodern ideas and processes or whatever, and supported them, a lot of them wholeheartedly, until gradually kind of starting to wake up from all these different kinds of illusions and lies and whatever it is. So it's, and to take it back to the Department of Artistic Freedom, is that all of those people who might have found themselves lost inside of this whatever game and machine that the art world has been for a long time, I don't expect anyone to agree with me necessarily, or think that I'm the one who's going to be running it and say this is absolutely the direction and blah blah. No, that's not going to be the case. We need an actual diversity of intellectual kind inside of this whole thing in order for its to fulfill its purpose. And that's sort of the point of this, is that if there's 200 philosophies and just one has been running the art world, and 4,000 different religions, they're all welcome. Or if you're working class, you're welcome. If you're white, if you're black, if you're yellow, if you're whatever, and if you have everyone's welcome, even the postmodernists. But they just got to know that they're not going to be running the show this time. That we're going to actually try to deliver on this intellectual diversity, as well as whatever your skin color is, and all this kind of thing. And I know Mitt Savage actually really agrees with this kind of ethos and mission. It's a shame that we have to only have his sort of frozen screen cap at the moment.
Yes.
Hold on, can you hear me? Here we go. Yeah, I don't know why the video is frozen.
It might be something in your settings, I think, because it should be open.
Well, I think it's on the phone, so sometimes it's happening on the phone.
But we can hear you, so that's the important part.
I'm here celebrating some birthdays. And tuning in, and I like the energy and atmosphere around. I guess speaking your mind, speaking your truth, being authentic, and it's kind of like everything's kind of happening at the right time. And I feel like the past 4, 8, 12 years may have been necessary, for people to kind of just learn about themselves, like truly understand what they want. They saw years and a decade of what they don't want,
Yeah.
and now it's like the time to just come free and just like stand on what you believe.
Yeah, I think many sort of mentalities and people have been forged in the fire of despair, to put it in poetic terms. But yeah, we surely know what we don't want, so it has been very educational. And this also to Trump, right? We know what we don't want, so don't give us more of that, right? So it's also, I think, our job to put his feet to the fire and make sure that we don't make the same mistake twice. And I think what you said with the Department of Artistic Freedom, you want a place where people can just express themselves as they truly are and to the fullest of their potential, right? That's what we want. And if it's intellectually, that they can discuss ideas with each other openly and disagree, in whatever way or shape or form, that's all fine. And if you're an artist, that you can express yourself any which way you want. Of course, we don't want hate or violence, right? That has always been a limit within Western society, that you don't want to spread those kind of things.
Well, there's one kind of thing that I think I would like the community to suss out very quickly, which is one quintessential thing about the postmodern movement is insincerity and this belief in nothing but
Irony.
power games and irony and this kind of thing. And while irony and comedy is certainly something that is a part of the whole artistic thing, it's more about how the swing has been on the insincerity side for so long that what we're left craving for is sincerity. And I'm personally maybe a little bit allergic, and I've always been quite allergic to insincerity. And I'm maybe meaning more the malicious kind of it rather than the humorous kind of it. I mean, taking the piss is another thing entirely. And, growing up with Monty Python sketches or whatever, that's an entirely different thing.
We're living in one.
Yeah, well, yeah. But it's an entirely different thing to being kind of part ploy of an evil dictator kind of scheme. So that's not going to be welcome.
Yeah.
And,
no. Yeah.
So that's it. But Bit Savage, do you want to tell a little bit about Adore and your kind of mission and how you landed in this whole thing?
Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, hear me good?
Yeah, man. Go for
there we go. Okay, yeah. So for me, I say, I'm a storyteller artist first, and years ago, just kind of being a visual artist and doing things like in galleries and the traditional art scene, kind of got a good bit of momentum. Just kind of saying, okay, I had my goals, get into like galleries and hotels, and sell art. And then when I found out about Bitcoin in 2016, it kind of, my mind, my intuition was saying go towards sovereignty, owning my content, getting financially literate. So like these concepts are coming up, and I had to take some time to like learn a lot. And then so I got into NFTs 2017, 2018 when CryptoKitties came in, and I saw the power, of digital items, digital tokens, collectibles, art. And so I said, you know what, I always say this, I got into the space, but I wasn't fully, immersed. I kind of stood back, a little bit skeptical, testing and seeing how things went. So, when Variable was coming out, SuperRare and OpenSea, I was reserved. I didn't put out everything I was doing. So obviously I wasn't like one of the featured artists. But I just like stayed back, saw what was happening. And a year or two later, obviously since those platforms aren't mine and I can't, create what I want to create, I said, let me go into my own path. And so that's kind of how Adore was born. Just a platform, by artists that wants to empower other artists. And, the ethos is now, fast forward to the present day, just kind of like the best tools on Bitcoin. So for me, me and Vesa over the years kind of, you know, see what we're doing. I see, what he puts out and kind of just talking over the years. So there's very few artists I do this with. I think Robin's might be one of them. But just kind of like saying, hey, checking in, what's going on? Here's what I'm building. What are you up to? And for me, just like it feels good to come to build on Bitcoin because that's what got me here. It's like a full circle moment. But just really knowing what Bitcoin stands for, what it's about, the power it has, the mind share it has, the security and decentralization factors it has. It's like being able to finally go full in and create on Bitcoin artistically. It's like feels free. Like I feel really good inscribing and creating on Bitcoin and coding. Really digging into ordinals because ordinals they're almost 2 years old. It's very new. So it has a ton of things to do to catch up. So we need more artists, more developers, more curators. We need a lot more on Bitcoin art space before it can even get on the same level as Ethereum. So you always hear it early. Everyone's early. Bitcoin's not even $100,000 yet. It's still early. So that's my view. And yeah, so the Department of Artistic Freedom. I know Vesa has many epiphanies and visions, and it's cool for him to be able to express this and just kind of present this to the world. And we had a space last week, and it was just kind of a almost impromptu space, but the right people came, and I feel like the right conversation was had, and it kind of like almost allowed people to say, what, it is possible to share my opinion, to be who I am, and still talk to someone else, and listen to them, and have a sensible, logical discussion.
Amen.
Yeah, it got tense a couple of times in that with Maximilian and her sort of feminist postmodern perspective, and then me saying that that's the that's the counter of, because I think with many artists they've never even heard the counter arguments.
No.
They're just so accustomed
No,
to being able to
of
say
course.
what they want and no one opposing it or no one saying anything, because then you're all the deplorable terms if you do. But because in that way I really liked how sincere she was. She wasn't saying it because she was being dubious or not that she didn't believe what she was saying, but I don't think she just ever heard sort of counter arguments to many of those things. And it's kind of a hot seat to do it, but we managed to do it in such a way that it was respectful both ways. And even though it must always feel like a personal attack when someone's countering your beliefs that you've held and no one's really argued against them in such a way that it makes sense, that it's a tough situation sort of. But that's what it was all about, that everyone, I think, walked away feeling like somehow something was expanded, and I think that's the purpose of it. So it was really cool that you facilitated that.
And I think you hit on something there, right? Because the West has been living in like one giant bubble, right? And actually, right now, the countries and the outside of the Western world, they are sort of holding a mirror up to us and say, "Look at what you've done, right? We're doing what we're doing because of you, right? And we've been doing what we've been doing because we're sort of living in this sort of isolated bubble that has been blown up by fiat money and that has kept out reality." And I think people, like this lady that you spoke to, they have also been sort of living in these bubbles, and that's, I think, the whole issue with where we are today is like a lot of these people have never ever experienced counter arguments, that otherwise it would have already broken down a long time ago.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And that's what this is all about, is expanding the sphere of what's possible and what you can or can't talk about or what you can or cannot express. And
that's why
then
you
it's a
grow and
community
grow.
that protects it. That's one of the, like, if there's the first rule of Fight Club and the second rule of Fight Club, it's artistic freedom. That's the whole point. And what I like about the ordinal stuff is because I'm still sort of homeless inside of the blockchain world in such a way that I came in as a Bitcoin centrist, but once we started making art, it became obvious that the Bitcoin maxis, they thought that everything digital inside of art, first of all, almost none of them could read art. They wouldn't know what the language was. They only bought Bitcoin logos and that's it. And what I thought was really just so mind-bending about it is that the world's first fully digital backed currency without a physical manifestation was telling the art community that they can't have digital art, that if it's only digital, then it's a scam. And that was like, I'm like, hold on a minute, can you hear yourself speak? And I'm not saying that Ethereum was the best solution for it, but it was obviously the platform that made a lot of things possible in order for us to take a step forward and those kinds of things. But then culturally, me personally, I'm much more of a Bitcoin maximalist, as in what is value and what is effort and what is all those kinds of things, because that's what my sort of life represents, is hard ass work to understand these massive movements and the philosophies and religions and things, and be able to kind of package them together in a sensible way that it's value in the communication, and that's what it's about. But then the Bitcoin Maxis wasn't the community at all to try and even start to scratch the surface to understand what I've done. And then people like Jimmy Song has the fucking audacity to call me a scammer on a Tone Vase podcast a few times, and I go like, oh, this is impossible, kind of like being a part of this. But then the next thing that happens is that the ETH community, they are uncomfortable with the central banking counter narratives and kind of this hard value or whatever. They want to do monkey pictures and they want to print apes so that they can make a bunch of money. And again, a community that didn't understand art, but we're totally fine with the fiat culture and postmodernism just continuing its merry ride, which was the purpose of why we came to kind of counter that to begin with. So I became an inconvenient artist and kind of sidelined out of the ETH movement because the things that I said were inconvenient. So I kind of fell in between that whole thing, and then you have your meme coins or whatever on top of that. But
you got one yourself.
Sorry?
You got one too.
Well, now what I'm hoping is that, ordinals might be the thing, because it's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Now, the first flush of ordinals is, again, just another avalanche of garbage for the most part. But I think that crafting of actual substance and people who might know something about what the reading of art and what is actually cutting edge of it and those kinds of things, and then being stored actually on chain rather than a page not found type situation at worst, maybe that is the sweet spot. But even with that, I still have an issue that I can't upload images with very high resolution without it costing a fortune, or even if it costs a fortune, I still can't have it in the resolution of where I would like it to be. But it's a good step forward again, and I think we just need to keep building towards when we will have the optimal solution, and that's why this is a pioneer effort to do this all together, and we can't be too merciless at how it's done. But yeah, it's certainly been quite the effort, and I have to say, for Bit Savage's just glory is that he's helped me kind of handheld from point to point to how to do my first ordinal, and kind of welcoming, and like just this super community guy and building and kind of welcoming and how to do it, and has had the patience to kind of walk me through all of this stuff, because it's not easy to do things on Bitcoin, and it's such a clumsy chain to try and do what we can already do with other chains so damn easy. So just my nod off to you, sir, that you're really doing the hard labor of trying to get this community going from your side, and I think it's really cool.
Most definitely, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, taking the time to just come here and do it. There's some artists that are on the fence, some artists that shunning away from this, some artists laughing at it. And for me, I'm as authentic as I'm going to be. I'm like, okay, this is what I want. I'm going to stand in, the foundation of what I want. You can easily degen and go crazy and shield and pump and dump. But I'm like, for me as a person, I'm an artist first. I care a lot about my art. So I'm going to take my time and make sure things are stable enough so I can put my art that I care about on any blockchain. And then, I'm going to teach others. Like you said, I'm a community person. I'm going to help others. I'm going to teach others. And I'm going to go hard for that. Some people might say, hey, why isn't the price this or that? Yeah, we're going to make money too. But I want the foundation as solid as possible. And Bitcoin's ordinals are very new. So it's like in a year, in another year, things gonna look a lot different. So I'm here, and this is who I am. And if people like it or not, just want get on this side, or if not, you can go where you enjoy. But this is what I'm bringing to the table.
Yeah, and I think what you both are sort of saying, Oak, is that we are in this transitionary period, right? I think this is like this weird transition period where fiat actually is even more prevalent than ever before, right? And that's, I think, why you also have these crazy memes and people sort of going after the money. And I think at some point that it will break, right? At some point you have like this Bitcoin standard or hyper Bitcoinization, and then I think all this crazy stuff will come to an end. But before we are there, fiat has this last moment of hysteria where it becomes where it goes hyperbolic before it collapses and implodes. But in that wave up, before it dies and crashes, it takes along everybody into this mania, right? Because in a way, and I speak for myself, right? I'm also forced to make, money, like fiat money, even though I don't like fiat money, even though I want Bitcoin, I do need fiat money in order to, to survive and to pay bills. And the bills are only getting higher as the system breaks down. You need more and more money. You have a bigger buffer in order to survive. So you're going to trade crazy memes and other crazy stuff, right? That you shouldn't do, or at least not recommend others doing, especially if they don't know what they're doing. But I think that's sort of where we are in this transition period, and at some point it will snap, and things will start to normalize. But right now we're in the hysteria or in the mania period where you actually get, like, instead of a hyper Bitcoinization, you get a hyper fiatization, where fiat sort of infuses all the blockchains, and where basically all the blockchains become most people on those blockchains, luckily, they become less and less, but the majority is still fiat minded that are operating and working on these blockchains.
Well, there's kind of like this whole thing of what fiat has done for us, and because it really, when the printing really started, that was early 80s, and kind of like the era of Warhol, and he started the silkscreen printing kind of manufactured factory, this kind of thing altogether, and he started diluting the symbols of what they meant and glorifying a much more superficial thing, but it's a commentary on what was going on in the West, and I kind of get it, and all whatever. But he said that everyone's going to be famous for 15 minutes, and that's become kind of prophetically true. But I think what's less understood about the process, and I'm going back to the French Revolution, and then the glorification of God and the connection to God of what art would have had back in the Renaissance days, and those kinds of things, is that if you think of what the statue of David by Michelangelo, what it represents is that you as an artist see this block of marble and you take away the excess to have this masterpiece happen that is kind of just this. It's hard to fathom of how you feel when you're around it to understand that someone just chipped this away and had this vision. And what it makes you reflect on is how you are your own statue of David, that you take away the dead wood and you build yourself up and you become a person of value and fight against adversity and find a divine connection, and all these kinds of things of what this level of mastery sets a very high standard towards to reach. And if you try to do that, then the order of the cosmos is sort of the right way around. And what we've tried to do since the French Revolution and the postmodern and the money printing and all this kind of thing is a complete inversion of all of that into how lazy and entitled and least valuable and learned and perspective wise and whatever can you become. So the statue of David, ironically, is now something that you could say is the trans man who is sort of twerking at children, trying to get dollar bills into the panties and kind of encouraging the kids to become sterile through a medical procedure. You could see this sort of fluctuation of that being, if you're very generous to the process, to say that that's a similar kind of process as what the Statue of David is, but just in complete inverse to all that we know to be the telos of purpose and goodness and beauty and whatever. And I know that there's a minority community that might feel like that is the case, that there's something beautiful and purposeful there, but that would be that you're just then a postmodernist. And that is one philosophy out of 200 and among 4,300 religions and different perspectives of how to look at the world. You truly are not, I mean, we're all a speck of dust in the eyes of the cosmos or whatever, but that is a view held nearly by no one, unless if you're completely petrified to say otherwise or ideologically possessed. And I think in the American election, what happened is that people said enough. We've had enough of this. We've played and toyed with this perspective for long enough. And, while it can remain in the niche or whatever, we want this stuff out of our schools, and we want it outside of our, peripheral of our kids and all of this kind of stuff. And again, I think the art world is trying to pretend, and will try to pretend for a while, that this election nor this perspective was heard or said, so that it will just skate away from this. And no, it won't this time. And we're all the better for it.
Yep.
One last point, which I think is just to say, is that how and why this is also a little bit the fault of the American extreme right, is that if you look at the Hindu kind of peripheral way of organizing a religion, is that you have very, very strange things working in the outskirts of this religion, and what is acceptable and what is not. But the sacred is held at the very center, and it's held by the appropriate initiated people on the inside of it, is what is valuable and what sort of revered. But then it allows a lot of different kind of movement and fluctuation on the outskirts and sort of elsewhere. It doesn't condemn nor judge.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the Westboro Baptist Church people who said, God hates fags and all of this kind of thing, when they went at that extreme, they inverted it so badly for the sort of outskirts, that they decided to go, okay, we will really mess with your sacred, and we will make a new one, and we'll bring our stuff to your center, and we're going to conquer you.
Yeah.
So this was already also set in motion by the right side, not only the left side. We've done this merry-go-round quite a bit in different kinds of ways.
Yeah.
And it's hopefully a time where we just go, maybe that's not the best way, that we always do one form of a witch hunt or another. We just have what is sacred on the center, and appropriate people hold it. But that doesn't mean that there's going to be now a complete pendulum swing the other way. But what I think is really positive about this moment in time is that this new kind of coalition of disillusioned Democrats and some new Republicans and all those kinds of things, at least from the US side, they're kind of centrist enough that they will take it quite, not necessarily in the institutional level, they won't be kind in how they're going to uproot some things and kind of replace some things with others. But I don't think this is going to be a cancellation mafia for the human beings themselves. I think this is going to be much kinder, this correction movement, towards the people on the other side, rather than what it was and would have been like if it would have went the other way around. So still, as I say all of these things, I think it's just very important to say that it's still good to remain kind. It's still good to remain thoughtful. And there's a lot of things in postmodernism of what it's brought to the surface, that it's made people more aware of things that they might have not been otherwise. And it's good that we hold to those things to a relative degree, whilst we torch things like, extreme left Marxism out of the education system, so maybe worthwhile pointing some nuance at that.
No, I agree with that. So the polymorphism of religions, especially outside of the West, is, I think, a very welcome perspective, right? I think the West has always been hyper-focused with monotheism, right? So monotheism is a form of centralization within religion. and you have different variants, but the Western variant is pretty obnoxious, right? It doesn't tolerate a lot of dissent, even though the Protestants were protesting against being sidelined by the Catholics. They then sidelined everyone who wasn't Protestant, right? So they even though you got like a million different kinds of Protestantisms, so that was a very fractured landscape, of course. But they basically you have one God, and he's in the Bible, and there's no other one. And
well, that's another thing for this Department of Artistic Freedom, because I thought to make a coffee mug that has the logo on the other side, and then on the other side it would say totalitarian tears, and then tears running down the mug. Because it's also worth considering that there might be people who are then think that it's only one God and my version of it, and everyone should bow down, and that's also not going to be cool.
No.
The whole thing is about this creative subconscious and different forms of it to come together to kind of protect creative freedom. And that means a lot of actual tolerance, and tolerance is annoying in that way that it really pisses you off sometimes, because there's going to be people who really don't agree with you. But we must
that's always be my point, right? So what you want is like real tolerance, and like real sort of, if you, for example, also with forgiveness, for example, you can forgive somebody, but real forgiveness is something, when you don't want to forgive somebody and you do it anyway, right? And the same is with tolerance. It's like, you got tolerance, the stuff that we have nowadays, and you got real tolerance, like the stuff that you actually don't want to tolerate somebody, but you do it anyway because you believe in tolerance. And in the West, we sort of lost, we don't understand these concepts anymore. Right? Because
we printed value, because that's a value word that requires hard work, that it got dissolved into this absolutely nothing. It's another thing of fiat printing that happened to the word tolerance. It's, I think, just the human condition. I mean, I see it in my newborn son, that he's more annoyed to go on the other boob of the mom because the other boob is not flowing as well as the other one. So he has to do a lot more effort on the other boob. So he sometimes screams because it pisses him off. So communism starts early, essentially from that sort of thing. The suffering part of the human experience is really, really difficult. But again, I've kind of said quite a bit. Any thoughts on this, Bit Savage? Are you still with us?
What was the question?
No, just any kind of thoughts you have on all things of this rampage.
Man, I mean, I got layers of thoughts, but ultimately, I feel like observation mode. So it's like on one side, speaking up, voice your opinion, being heard, and on the second side, being observational. So seeing what's rolling out, seeing how things are happening. For example, we see virtual intelligence rolling out, and everyone's like, "Oh, you can use virtual intelligence to do this, get better website, get better copy, get better videos, get better art." That's all surface stuff. What's actually coming, it's going to go way beyond that. So for me, I'm just like observing what's actually coming and what are people actually building. Just seeing like NVIDIA and Tesla, IBM, just these big corporations, what they're actually planning. And that's kind of where my mind's geared towards. I love being an artist. I love content creation, but also just being more cognizant of what's actually, like, society's about to shift dramatically.
Absolutely. Can I ask you, what is your take on the Trump win? How do you see that?
I think it's a good win, a win for all. I feel like it was needed, it was necessary. I feel like there's definitely a lot of corruption and behind the scenes trickery going on. So I feel like Trump can be the era of a wave to where democracy in America could shift. I'm for I'm for advanced society, advanced civilization. I feel like the government democracies around the world, they're not even coming close to what humanity should be. So for me, I'm like, let's make a new advanced party. Let's get some galactic archons here. I'm ready to just kind of take it to a different level. But for Trump, I feel like it's a shift in the direction that can bring good change.
Oh, speaking about those galactic archons, I think there will be some revelations also in that regard. He's actually putting a broom in many different places, so that it will be very interesting the coming years. I think people's bubbles will be blown to bits.
I just think what I really love about it is that you can be of any opinion of these people, and maybe Trump is very polarizing in so many ways, but at least how much I've listened to RFK and Tulsi and Vivek and Elon and those, the propaganda machine has been going so hard at them that I understand if you haven't really followed the situation, and who knows all the things that are going on behind the scenes, but I feel like they're very high integrity people. They really put themselves on the line, and at least have my respect, and I think the respect of so many people as to how they've approached this whole thing. And I think, to your point, Nicholas, about this forgiveness thing, that was so annoying about the whole woke thing, is that there is no redemption inside of that whole thing. It's more like just an increasing purity test that no one can pass, and there's no forgiveness, and there's no pathway out. And essentially, from the best of our people, that's all you can ask is enough sincerity and an actual effort toward the good. And you look at someone like RFK, what kind of kettles has he been boiled up until now for him to be who he is right now, and what kind of challenges and Goliaths he's already fought. He's the right guy for the job, for the Department of Health. If you've read his book, like The Real Anthony Fauci, and you've followed what kind of lawsuits and environmental things he's done his whole career and whatever, and then people say, oh, but he's a conspiracist, theorist, whatever, or a vaccine denier. Well, if your father and your uncle were first murdered by the biggest, most known conspiracy in the world, then maybe that affects you a little bit, and he's maybe biased towards that direction, but he's got good reason to be. And secondly, when you actually listen to what he says about the vaccines and what he points to, he's not a vaccine denier. He's someone who says that there are vaccines that have a very different outcome, and it's this particular mRNA one, and what he knows about Fauci and the things behind of how he got into the substance to begin with, that he's not against vaccines. He just has a certain perspective on the whole of the medical industry. And then you have all these medical world whistleblowers who've come forward, who are in support of that, and what kind of a machine they've gone through in order to be able to be the people that now come and speak on these things against these behemoths. And you go like, okay, so if these people are now going to be the ones who go and try to clean up house with the best that they can, as opposed to what would have been the alternative, the world has hope. That's and I'm hoping, because there's another saying that is, at least in Europe, I'm not sure even if it's an American saying, but it's more like if the US sneezes, Europe catches a cold. So in this particular kind of way, I think this will also affect Europe, and it's high time that it does.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait for that moment. Yeah, no, I think it will put Europe in a very difficult position, which is also, why they were so one-sided and so biased against Trump, and also why it's so personal and so emotional, and the emotional reactions that people have towards Trump, like he's the devil incarnate, right? That people actually, have these homicidal tendencies, that they actually kill people. I'm not sure, how prevalent that is. I hope it's not very prevalent. But, these reactions that some people, these visceral reactions, which I also see in my own family and friends, when you sort of mention that you think he's not all bad, or that he might actually do something positive, or that the alternative is 1,000 times worse. no, some people just explode, like, you know, that they that you've lost your mind, and basically what I'm saying is these people are no longer using their mind. They're no longer listening. They're no longer using logic. They're only reacting emotionally. Right?
Programmed.
They've been programmed and conditioned to react to this image, to this person, to this symbol in an emotional reaction. It's a Pavlov reaction. Like, it's a, you know.
But again, that's why I kind of want to bring out the Hindu perspective, for example, because, you know, if you're inside of the American paradigm, then you have the Christians versus the woke, which is kind of the thing. So if you throw in the Hindu perspective or the Buddhist perspective into that, it kind of messes with the program. And I made an artwork. Well, I made a couple of artworks, actually, but there's one that I would specifically like to talk about in relation to this. I sent you the kiss, right? Can you pull it up?
Yeah, gonna pull it up right now. Here it comes. It's underneath this one.
Yeah, the text is rather long.
Should be there.
So, because SuperRare put up this competition about, you know, different versions of the comedian banana artwork, and I was in Miami when that thing was originally auctioned at Art Basel. And, you know, I was giving a lecture at the time at the Bitcoin Center of Miami, thinking that NFTs are going to bring a lot of transparency to the art world. Naive person that I was. And, you know, essentially, but then later on, I learned this, that with regards to Jackson Pollock in the 40s and 50s, the CIA, and that's one conspiracy fact, is that we know that the CIA was funding a lot of, through different shell organizations and funds, they were putting a lot of money into modern art and buying and making sure that Jackson Pollock and a lot of the kind of leftist artists, Pollock is an interesting one because he was, Madame Blavatsky was a big influence on him. So he had a spiritual perspective as well as a leftist kind of perspective. But he was encouraged to be as free as possible and shed all constraint and do whatever the hell he wanted, because they wanted to counter the Soviet propaganda at the time that was just glorifying the despot leaders or then the workers in the field or this kind of a thing. So American exceptionalism became funded by CIA as something that, you know, do what you want, and this is how truly free you are, and this is why we're better than the Soviets or the communist paradigm. Now, when you look at all of these different things, like the banana is all of a sudden sold for 750,000. So if you have any brain cells, you're going to question it a little bit that someone just randomly came and happened to drop nearly $1 million for a fucking duct tape banana on a wall. There's a couple of perspectives to that, which is, I started considering the famous video of Yuri Bezmenov, the ex-KGB spy who eloped.
I got it here. You want to play some?
Please do.
Okay. I actually prepared for the show, so.
Oh, dope.
I got the video here. For the people who don't.
Nice. I got to run in a bit. I'm going to keep listening, but it's been amazing talking, and glad this energy is here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you. Keep up the good work.
See you later, bro.
Here we go. Oh, wait.
Mr. Bezmenov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages.
So it goes into the four basic stages, which is, I think, demoralization, and there's one before that. I think, what was it again? 4 parts. It is, anyway, it's demoralization, destabilization, crises, and normalization. But I sort of like the way he's telling it. He's actually telling it with a smile, and I also like the way that the Russians do have a sense of humor, even active measures, like, you know.
Well, yeah, but demoralization is a very large part of the destabilization of society that you then get to normalize and invert. But that's sort of part of this, is that what could be more demoralizing for a whole creative class of people than to watch a banana being sold for $1 million while you can't pay rent, nor no one cares about you? Or what could be more the argument that why should I even try than to see these kinds of games being played? Or then the other side of the Abramovich kind of satanic rituals and those kinds of things, even though she does some very amazing things and is a legitimate artist, but there's still this kind of dark ritual side to her, some of her things that I don't personally, I'm not a fan of. But this kind of thing is like, so, you know, Gustav Klimt's Kiss is so famous. It's so amazing. What a beautiful artwork, and it nourishes your soul when you see it and you think of couplehood and kind of the continuation of life, and what would be more optimal than a truly loving woman and man, and they become parents to the next generation that is also filled with beauty and this kind of purpose and whatever. That's at least what I diffuse from watching this artwork. And then the utter bastardization of this process, which would be banana kissing the eagle of CIA. You know, that is this piece that I put together, and it's this because you've had this demonization of the conservative point of view, or increasingly the centrist, or even classic liberal now, to such a degree that there are many people happy inside of their bubbles thinking that conservatives are just evil people, as opposed to people who are trying to strive for
backwards.
So this complete inversion. And I think the argument hasn't been brought, at least from the artistic side, that if the CIA came into the art world in the 40s and 50s already, that's now 70, 80 years. And did they leave? Or what kind of operations? I mean, we can only wonder. So now we go into Joe Rogan podcast land, essentially, with this whole thing, because we can only, that's the only thing that is confirmed that we know for a fact is the 40s and 50s involvement. But it's unlikely that they've left the space. And what have they been doing in that space ever since? And I don't know.
With increasing amounts of money and resources.
Yeah, and it's not gotten better. And there's been only a certain amount of kind of this demoralization perspective that you're allowed to have in these things that hit the press and then go in this crazy kind of way. So I'm not saying it's all them. There's so many different factors at play, but that's at least the kind of, when I came up with this artwork, I had to ask myself, do I have the balls to make it? You know, it's because it's also thoroughly scary to kind of dwell into those kinds of things altogether. But I think that's what the banana invites us to do, is to really think on, because the other SuperRare piece for this competition that I made, which is kind of just these different artists making all of these different versions of the banana, kind of inspired by the paradigm. Then the other one that I had was Michelangelo, the kind of, because you know the famous touch in the Sistine Chapel of God is extending fully his finger, and then Adam has this sort of slightly crooked finger, because the crooked finger actually symbolizes how free will was given to, that God has a full reach towards humanity, but humanity needs to do their best effort in order to straighten the finger to have the connection, that it's free will for us to do what we will. Oh, that's a great piece.
Space Painter.
Yeah, by Space Painter. I've been discussing with her a lot about all of this stuff as well. She has a very brave story as well of what she's been up to, because you know she had to even say to people that, oh, by the way, I'm a woman, because she was being treated like a bro, and kind of like she's not been a fan of the identity politics at all, because she wants her art to be known for her merits and her substance rather than, you know, all of these superficial things. So much respect to her.
Yeah, and it's a great work of art.
Yeah. I didn't even realize to begin with is that the whole point was that she'd been fucked by the banana to give up. I just thought, oh, it's about giving up at the face of, you know, the sacred towards the profane. But yeah, there was a more graphic sort of interpretation that she had to clue me up on. So I felt a little bit embarrassed to not see it, but there we go. Where was I?
The CIA. So, you know, the way I sort of see it is like, I think civilizations, and you also saw it in Rome, right, as they sort of progress, and basically through their own success, right, because they are so successful, they progress, and then they reach this tipping point, and then they go down, right? This is sort of, you know, civilizations come and go, and as they go down, then they start printing money, right, or debasing their currency in order to keep things afloat and to keep the illusion together, the illusion of their power, right, the grip on power, and actually expand it. And as they expand their grip on power, they actually destroy the system, because the system needs air to breathe, right, to grow. So that you actually should release your grip on power. That's also, you know, the takeaway from Iain McGilchrist's famous, fantastic book, which I always reference, you know, The Master and His Emissary. It's where the emissary takes over from the master, and the master is actually the master because he lets go of things, and because he lets go, they come to him and he can sort of interact with it. But if you increase your grip on stuff, it actually escapes your grip, and that's, you know, the emissary is very good at gripping and manipulating and grabbing stuff, but basically the more you grab, the more it escapes your grab or grasp. And so this is like a natural progress. Like I think it's like fruit on a tree, or, you know, name any other natural process. Only it's it relates to humanity itself. And as the fruit starts rotting, or in this case, society's carcass starts rotting, it attracts vultures and predators, and they rise to the top. Right? They get rewarded for rising to the top. And the system becomes corrupted, and it attracts corrupt individuals, and you get the self-selection. So the good people go away because they no longer feel recognized with the system. They no longer get rewarded for their actions. Actually, they have to do more and more for less and less. And the people who they abuse the system get rewarded, right? The more you abuse the system, the bigger the rewards, right? People are that's also one of those famous passages from the Bitcoin Standard, which is actually a passage from another book. About the fall of Rome, where at the end of the Roman Empire, you saw, you know, wild speculation, and people were just, you know, sort of speculating in order to stay alive, and it sort of hollowed out the economy until there was no economy anymore, and the money that they got from it was worthless dross. So even though sort of and you also see it in America, right? The growth of these secret services. How many do you have now? Right, 20, 22, 25 secret services. How many secret services do you need? Like you got the DIA, you got the CIA, you got the NSA, I think you got 20 plus different kind of, and they are the Praetorian Guard of Rome. And at the end of the Roman Empire, it was the Praetorian Guard who decided who became emperor. And if you didn't listen, then they killed you, right? Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the end of the empire, right? You start promoting stupid people at the top, in order to control them, and then the end result is a worthless empire.
Well, that's kind of that was the Jordan Peterson paradigm. Is that if you try and make the losers of society, which I think we should have as, and Joe Rogan says this, we should have as few losers as possible, altogether, to have this encouragement of things. But if what we've been doing is that, because life is so difficult, and there's been this affluent bubble for a little while, which is now crumbling at an incredible speed, then now we will remember as to why you should aim for the highest always. Because if you don't aim for the highest and you start to make the losers the kind of highest, then that means that once difficulty hits you and you've idolized the wrong thing, there's nothing that is going to be the safety net for the absolute disaster that is going to follow. So even though there's nothing perfect about striving for the ideal, and it's super, super difficult to do so, try the other way and you'll find how much worse that is. And that's where we were. That I think what at least the US election was about is that people said, hey, these are luxury beliefs and this is unsustainable, and this is going to lead into a complete and utter total chaos and disaster unless if we reverse it. So fuck this and let's take another direction.
Yeah, no, they took the red pill, right, or the orange pill in this case. But
well, that's the next step. But RFK has put his whole net worth apparently into Bitcoin, and I think Vivek and others are fully on board with that. So even from that point, in administration, let's say if Gensler finally flies out and all those different kinds of things. But the thing of what I was saying before you showed the Space Painter piece was I sent you a tweet on WhatsApp. That it was the other submission banana that I made, that I actually put into the SuperRare competition, which I thought was quite, well, it's funny and it isn't at the same time. It again references the same paradigm of the French Revolution and the cutting of the spiritual thing.
Yeah, I might not be able to find it when I didn't catalog it. So
should I put it?
Yeah, if you can find it, because
where should I send it to you?
Yeah, just send it to my DM on Twitter, and then I'll put it up. Yeah. Let's see.
Here.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, yeah. That's good that you sent it to me. There we go. And I think it was
up a bit.
This one, right?
That one. So, like I was saying, the touching of God's finger is fully extended, and Adam's is a little crooked to symbolize free will to try and do so. So I thought, this. So the name of the artwork is called "I Am Potency." Impotency. So nice. This limp banana of a finger is what we've been trying to do with art for quite some time. And taking the absolute piss out of this thing that is, if you've had spiritual experiences, if you've had a moment with the sacred, and then it's not one of those things that is easy to sustain or live throughout unless if you have a process and sometimes dedicate your whole life to it. You see this whole succession of things from the questioning of the whole divine paradigm, then you go towards Nietzsche and all he said and how that was distorted or whatever, but the trying to build the Superman, and then you have all the way down to washing that to whatever this banana is. It's funny, but it's also a profound commentary on the state of the Western world at the moment and what we've been doing, printing away our whole value while the barbarians are at the door and kind of corrupting our whole system. And this is a major thing of what I think this is how it's coming across to me. And there is a new Christian revival movement. You see people like Russell Brand and many others kind of bring it back to, into the conversation in a fresh way. And of course, Jordan Peterson is massively responsible for part of this, speaking to the disillusionment from the rational Richard Dawkins paradigm as to what's necessary. So it's while it's sort of depressing and funny at the same time, it also has right underneath it the solution, which is just take away the idiot banana and return back to some of the things that built the West, and kind of rediscover what the value is that is in these parts of the world.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it like it's the only part of value in the world. What I really liked, for example, was the conversation between Vivek and Jordan Peterson, where Jordan was saying that this is what the West knew and this and that. And Vivek said, well, actually, if you know something about Hinduism, that's exactly what we believe and how we see the world as well. So it's like this connection making of what the Godhead is altogether and how to pursue it, either psychologically or in your ideals or even these sacred experiences. And if we do extend the finger towards that again, I think a lot of the malaise that the West has is going to go away. It'll just drop off, and we will find ourselves in a much better position altogether. But people like yourself, of how much work you've been doing on your behalf for the artistic community and for the money community and all these kinds of things, for people to even realize what fiat currency is or what money is one artistic venture towards the same thing, is the extending of the finger. That's what I've been doing, whether it was my documentary films or artistic processes, trying to create a space where people get connected to themselves or to these grand paradigms or whatever. We have a large community that is coming toward value from different kind of perspectives that, in one way, of course, is a little bit frustrated with all the kind of cancellations and bullshit that we've had to go through for quite a long time.
It also makes it fun.
Yeah.
Looking back, at least. Yeah, but I also don't mind extending the finger to to the centralized system. Only it's a different kind of finger. But but to bring it back to the Department of Freedom of Expression, artistic freedom. I think and to tie it back to sort of civilization and what we were talking about, and then taking it to the individual level. So where we are now is like, we got weak individuals. And why do we have weak individuals? It's basically because we were living on the future and destroying our past or ignoring our past. And also because the system demands weak individuals, right? Because those are the easiest to control and to keep in place. In the sheeple, they want more and more sheeple in order, to keep the system going. Even though if you want like a real system that has a future and that has growth and development, it consists of strong individuals and a sound money, right? That can actually expand. And that's a system where you have real tolerance, real forgiveness, and real work. And real work is rewarded because people will only part with their real money, with their sound money, if it's actually valuable. But with fiat money, you will throw it at bananas because the money isn't worth anything, right? So, so basically, with the Bitcoin standard, with Bitcoin, hyper-Bitcoinization, or combination of gold or whatever other kind of sound money, comes real wealth and real progress and strong individuals that stand for their principles. Like with Bit Savage, he stands in his foundation. You want people who actually speak out for their ideas and that are authentic, right? Like what you said with fake insincerity. I do like irony. I do like sort of what the postmodernists were sort of getting at. But the problem is that the fakeness and insincerity became a dogma or dominant, or you weren't allowed anymore to be sincere and to be authentic because it wasn't allowed to exist. It couldn't exist because we were all not sincere. People can't be sincere by definition. Look at the system. But actually, postmodernism is a reflection of the system, right? So they were actually reflecting back what they were critiquing. So they were basically the bastard child of fiat, the fiat culture that they were, trying to criticize. But yeah.
Well, there's in Bhagavad Gita, there's this whole thing is that one of the worst things of what humanity has to endure is lust. Lust is that eternal hunger that is never satisfied and kind of always demands more. I suppose you would say something like Theo Von discussing his porn addiction, from going from one vanilla porn to whatever increasing excesses to all the way down the bottomless pit, and you go that I'm not sure if we discussed this the last time, but this is why also I think I really love the fact that I went into so many different religions to try and discover my own path, to try and see the value of it and have a little bit of an overview of what it is that the snake that keeps eating its own tail, the Ouroboros snake, that the Buddhist perspective is that you don't have a centralized authority, a god or whatever, that it's this transcendent and then you dissolve into nothingness. So that's very different to the Christian heaven, or if you go to the 7 planets above of Krishna consciousness or those kinds of things, you have very different versions of what is before we are born, and definitely very different versions of what is after. And then you have different versions, of course, on how to get there and what the rules of life are. Christianity is very sort of focused on, in our current texts, about how to live life. It doesn't really describe the afterlife to a very efficient degree in what is available. But one thing that all of them have in common, from Buddhism to Christianity to whatever, is that they kind of describe this snake that keeps eating its own tail, that you have different kind of sense pleasure, or the sense mechanism of, you might try to get it with gluttony or greed or lust or whatever drugs you're doing or something to try and numb away the human suffering, that there's a realm behind that, the transcendent, and you should have discipline and different processes in order to control your lust and kind of get rid of it and find this heaven on earth, what is sort of available if you see that there's something behind the veil. And then, while life won't be perfect, but if you're not guided by your lust and greed on the daily all the time, then your life is undoubtedly going to be better. And all of them agree on this thing, that the sense pleasure mechanism is the one that is really going to hurt an individual and a society as they progress. And this is something that the fiat culture, I think it feeds all the worst aspects of us and is in complete conflict with the transcendent and its objectives and the kind of hard labor and effort you need to do in order to become a person who might get this quote unquote heaven on earth, to try and have an impact with the transcendent. So that's a profoundly valuable thing, and it's hard to argue against. And again, one of those things, and when you see the sort of pride parades or something like that, where you're trying to make lust into the sacred and then essentially in one way fuck your way through to nirvana, and you go, okay, so you won't have any discipline, you won't have any transcendent, you won't have anything that, so it's that complete inversion of that thousands and thousands of years of knowledge of what we have on those kinds of things. And while you might say that people should have the freedom to do so, and fine, but the idea is that you're not going to find what you're looking for. Yep. It's not going to be there, no matter how deep into that rabbit hole you're going to go. And that's the critique. You're not going to be punished by, you're not going to be punished for your sins. You're going to be punished by them.
Yeah, you reap what you sow.
So that's the perspective. So it's not coming from a place of, oh, you hate these people or whatever. No, I just conceptually understand how this works, and I've had a touch of the transcendent, where I realize that all the sense pleasure mechanisms of where they lead and what they can do for me and what they really can't do for me, and what the direct connection is in comparison, which is irreplaceable. So those kinds of things, if I discover and want to showcase inside of my art, I can't do it inside of the paradigm of the postmodern art world, because they're directly opposed to discovering everything that I hold most valuable about what my whole artistic process is about. So of course I have to stand in rebellion against it, because they've been actively trying to cancel me my whole damn career because not only do they not get it, they are actively the most active people not to want to get it. So they will resist it with all their might because their identity is completely invested into the other side of the equation. So this is the most beautiful thing about the Department of Artistic Freedom, is that we have all of these philosophies, we have all of these perspectives, we have all of these people who've been left outside of the gallery space and the contemporary museum space because of this postmodern paradigm and the fiat paradigm. Now that the internet is here, and they will hear for crazy people like me talking about, how it's actually possible for all the people who've been left out to come back into the art world and express themselves. The heretical idea is that start your own gallery. If you're conservative, if you're religious, if you're centrist, if you're classic liberal, if you're whatever, working class, stay-at-home moms, I would love to see a gallery by stay-at-home moms. And it could be like a web page where stay-at-home moms who have maybe at some point a moment to themselves, they'll make some artworks and they'll make a gallery and they'll sell their own artworks to each other or something like that. That would be absolutely incredible, because it's not coming to a gallery space near you anytime soon.
That's sort of the mindset of many people, is that it has to be brought to them, right? It's not like coming from themselves, but they are expecting the state or somebody else to hand it to them. And that's also sort of what has been sort of inculcated with many people. And I think that also ties into what you said about the senses. And by the way, about the pride, the ultimate sin. I mean, why call it pride? Anyway, but the senses is, of course, what Plato was also writing about it. You have to control your senses. Spinoza wrote about it. You got almost every famous Western philosopher wrote about it.
Eastern.
And
for that matter.
Also Eastern, it's
Rumi wasn't a postmodernist,
No.
Or Sun Tzu with his Art of War, or all of these kinds of things. Most of the world is not cool with this whole thing.
No. Yeah, they rebel not only against Western interference in their countries and all the shenanigans that the West pulls, and of course now they also understand the fiat system and what it has done to their countries, because Western countries always thought, why can't they manage their economies like you? What losers? But it's because of us. It was because of what financial hitmans were doing abroad, right? So people are finally sort of putting the pieces together and understanding, but they were also agitating, of course, against our culture. And I think there's two versions of Western culture, right? The original version with the humanities and philosophies, and the one that actually built the society that we now have, and the new Western culture, which is being exported, which is sort of crass commercialism and superficial materialism and super silliness, right? So bananas and that kind of stuff. So that's also what they're agitating against, and that there's no room for religion, spirituality, and people who have fundamentally different worldviews, right? They are not tolerated because they are a danger for the existing paradigm, and that's now falling apart, right? From within it's falling apart, and from out it's falling apart, and that's why you see so much resistance from what I consider elements within the deep state, who see their grip on control, which is actually the cause of their losing control, is that they want to extend their grip on control. And they're losing it, right? They're losing their shit, and they're blaming everyone except themselves, because they, it's of course it's never themselves, right? Because they always do the right thing for us. But
really like, because if you think of something like the distortion of signal to noise, I don't particularly enjoy critiquing other artists' work or themselves, of what they stand for and things like that. But I suppose at one point, when you become a symbol for a whole space, for example, how like Beeple became for the crypto art thing, he came in not because to me Beeple is the beginning of the end of crypto art, and he didn't understand what the paradigm was about. He didn't understand the monetary system. He didn't really understand crypto at all or what it was about. He was just sort of invited in, and people knew that they were going to be able to make a lot of money through him. So he was kind of, pardon the expression because it's a political expression, I don't mean that he's an idiot. He's a very smart guy in many different ways, but he was used like a useful idiot in the space of where he came to. And a lot of he's very, it's like this social media commentary of what is the hot right now and taking a symbol like a Bitcoin symbol and using it in one way. I'm not entirely sure that he still understands the paradigm very well. And he uses these it's almost like visual porn. It's like if you think that from first principles, sex is about procreation, and then it's about connection and enjoyment and marriage and holding together, and then you go down to promiscuity to all the way to porn, which is a simulation of the thing of what might be the sacred connection or procreation or the world continuing. So in this way, what he's doing is that he's taking these powerful symbols and sort of randomly using them and taking the thing right now and then throwing it out there. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that to call it crypto art is blasphemy to begin with, because it has nothing to do with that. And secondly, to make it the very top and the most expensive thing, like it is the thing to behold, which is essentially porn, you've again inverted the pyramid to what is kind of feeling like what is the demoralization process of all this. And one part of what I witnessed in my lifetime already, I mean, the thing had been going on for some time, but art critics in the era of postmodernism, and let's say from Duchamp's The Fountain up until here, it's become a near impossibility to be an art critic altogether. And you'll have people like Hans Ulrich Obrist, who seems like a very dignified character otherwise, and kind of understands deeply about things in art. To see him in a Beeple show with the boys because he has to be a part of the scene must be like a chalkboard kind of sound to what his actual aesthetics and preferences are. I'm sure there's things that he enjoys about it, and then the social thing or whatever, but he's to me the symbol of one of the last ones who are trying to cope and find ways and how to be at the top with his expertise inside of a world that is increasingly corrupting to the point of how the fuck do you do that job with any integrity? That's so we don't really have. It's like you can only have robbers inside of the whole place and no police.
Yeah.
How long before the game is not very fun anymore and it becomes just a festival of corruption and a nightmare? I mean, that's kind of, we need the cat and the mouse game to be a part of this in a way that makes sense, but it's impossible inside of the postmodern paradigm. So this is why also I'm very consciously speaking about God and my own discovery of that, because I need to go back all the way down before the French Revolution to find a time when it wasn't so, and then the amazing things that we achieved before then, and how in a different kind of sane society was, and what kind of a job of sort of mental assassination happened so that all things were demonized to the point of where we are right now, that you can't have like the positive and the negative. You only have to look at the positive or only the negative, because both things are kind of necessary in the process. But I talk about it because if you have a knowledge of history, that you know something that makes sense and it's coherent and there's one thing and you may critique it, but that's where sort of the buck stops, and then the very opposite of it, where we're right now, you need to discover where the opposite was in order to make sense of what happened in the middle, or how to maybe fix some of the things of what we have here. So I'm taking a very conscious stand that it's toward God, and it's toward this discovery of what that is the antidote to whatever this fucking banana is and what it's doing to everyone in the process of it.
Yeah, and I think you said it also in many different places. Like, you use the word God, but it can be, whatever it is. It's an ideal that you focus on and that you put all your effort towards. And for some people, it's like the Christian God. For others, it's the Hindu God. but it can also be, it can have many different guises and many different shapes and carry many different names, right? It's
for sure, but it's also a direct experience.
yeah.
If it's not a direct experience, then it remains very cerebral and it remains very abstract, and it's all these things. It is all of these things, and
but
the lengthiest of discussions. But unless if you've had the direct experience, then that doesn't really translate into what I'm trying to say about why someone would try to make art to glorify all of it. And the direct experience has to be a part of it, as well as the all the different versions of abstraction from there on out.
Yeah, I think one of the powers of art is, of course, that it is aimed at the senses, right? And the senses are the easiest access points for, as we just discussed, right? Because people are sensual creatures first and foremost, and the senses most easily lead us astray. But as as an artist, both visual or auditory, I guess that is the right word. You also use those same senses that can lead us astray in order to point us towards something higher, right? To elevate us. For example, if you listen to Bach, the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, it's also an audio experience, but it's very elevating. It sort of does something with your mind. You could even argue that perhaps music is the most powerful of all the art forms, but let's not go into that. But
mixed media now, because you can combine it with the visuals, and then that's all the whole thing.
But yeah, the point is, like, fiat culture, it sort of focuses on the lowest of the lowest denominators. It rewards endless chasing after an unstillable hunger for more. It's about materialism, reductionism, everything. It wants to smash everything what's the English word? I'm struggling for words here, but it just wants to anyway, the symbols are, the hand gestures speak for themselves.
All of our conversations thus far have really been about, the telos, the purpose and beauty and meaning and those kinds of things. This is, again, it's what I find so weird about the situation where we find ourselves in, because, like, it's the most normal thing in the world is to try to find purpose and beauty and meaning to your life and all this kind of thing, and it's so clearly the thing that is, with people like you and me, it's like the fulfillment, and it's above it. It's like there's two different games, and especially with the fiat system, you have the game of trying to make as much money as possible and be within these different circles of money and power and whatever, and that is very contra to the telos. So you can either pretty much, it's difficult to pick both of them at the same time. I've been trying to do it, and to a certain degree, luckily better now at also not just being poor and miserable. But because my aim is toward the beauty and the meaning, then it's difficult to hang out with the power and the excess and the money and the sense pleasure crew. They're like magnetic poles. They don't really mix so well.
No,
so
because
let me just finish this point,
okay,
which is that this is why it's so important that I keep bringing up the Medici family. Is that was a combination of the rich and the powerful and the telos and the supporting of those in discovery of telos, like Da Vinci and Michelangelo and those who then created the Renaissance of everything that we know about the art, even though the German Renaissance and the Germanic people's Renaissance was also something that was quite subdued. They made amazing things as well. We don't talk about those too much. It's part of our forgotten history. But there's this divide, and my call for the responsibility of the Bitcoin community and the value community to learn about this stuff and to support this stuff. This is why it's so annoying for me to see that the Bitcoin community would say that anything digital art, even though I can't read what it fucking says, is a scam. It's so like that is the opposite of the Medici family, of their responsibility of being part of the monetary revolution and the value revolution altogether. They need to know this stuff and I get it. I understand how bad the humanities have become in order to teach this stuff, and how they've indoctrinated people to the very opposite of all of this thing. And it's been going on for a long time, but we are the ones. We're the ones who've been waiting for, and this is why I'm doing insane things like the Department of Creative Freedom. It has the humor in it, but it's also super serious, and I've dedicated my whole life to this, and I would like it to work a little bit better, and I need help in order for this to become a thing, so there you have it.
But I think that will come, right? I think with as Bitcoin progresses and when it comes into its own, because it's not, it's still like in what is it called, puberty, I guess, or maybe becoming like a young adult now. And let's say young adult.
But if you're in a war zone, even though you're 15, if you're in a war zone, you can't behave like a 80s American teenager.
No, that's true. That's true. But I think, at the moment they are, at least they were, maybe that's now changing, but they were very much under siege, right? So they had this siege mentality because Bitcoin was under fire from all sides, right? It was against the environment. It was only for criminals. It was, et cetera, et cetera. So everything was wrong about Bitcoin.
Sure, but it's also a very libertarian perspective, and it's very Ayn Rand, and it's very there's no God, there's no spirituality inside of that. It's all just I'll do whatever I want, and it's still a kind of sense pleasure paradigm from their transcendent perspective, and that's what it needs to grow up to be. It needs to kind of put on big boy pants to realize what the Medici stood for and what this revolution is really about. It's a spiritual revolution just as much as it is as a monetary one, and this is what I think RFK and the others really get right when they say that this is a part of what this is. It's a spiritual revolution, and
but I mean, the Bitcoin revolution was one strand of like many different revolutions that were happening simultaneously, and probably the most important one of them all, because the only way to break out of this system was to create an alternative to it in order to put the system into stark contrast. Because finally, through Bitcoin, you could finally take distance from it and see it for what it was. It's basically one giant control and extraction system. Right, that's what the fiat system actually is. But you needed something to step outside of it in order to see it, because there was no alternative. All the other alternatives were different kind of fiats, basically. So basically, the Bitcoin revolution is the revolution on the monetary in the monetary arena. But you also have also the spiritual revolution going on. At the moment with these UAP hearings, right? I mean, I fully agree with Diana Pasulka when she sort of for that matter, Graham, that you got this whole new sort of paradigm that is sort of brewing underneath and bursting at the seams, and that is happening too, right? And that is perhaps even bigger than Bitcoin. Probably much bigger than Bitcoin, but you did need sort of Bitcoin in order to get there. And there's many other revolutions that are also happening at the same time. And at some point they will converge, right? I mean, that's an inevitability. They have to converge. So we're heading to that point where they come together. And then that's the point where those new medici will emerge, right? Where sort of these different strands come together, and people get the full picture, right? Because the Bitcoiners at the moment, they feel under siege, which I can totally understand because they are, and and they need to focus all their attention on that. And they are like the pit bulls and the guard dogs. And that takes their full energy, and their background is from the culture that they inherited, which is
sure. But the pit bull is still a low-level paradigm. If you think of the chessboard, you have your pit bulls and you have your rams, but you need to have a king behind that, and you need to have the sort of cultural sophistication to know how the game is played on multiple different levels. If you only have bulls inside of the ring, they're going to be killed pretty soon by those who aren't animalistic.
True. But let's take the example of feudalism, right? So in the feudalism, you had these lords, and they were battling it out, and at some point they created stability in the region because they battled as much as they could, and they killed every opponent, and then there was nobody left to fight, and then they started to become cultured, right? As the stability, that's the Maslow pyramid. As soon as you sort of create the stability, then you can sort of become more cultured. At the moment, this is the warlord. This is the 7 wars period, right? From the in every culture you have like these giant war periods, and
I don't agree with you. I don't agree that this war is going to be won by this kind of warlord mentality. It's if it is a spiritual revolution and you deny the spiritual aspect of it and you deny the value culture aspect of it, it'll never be won. That's my perspective. I would say that there's like, in the first run of, let's say, crypto art and NFTs, we imported all the postmodern experts, the people we wanted to run away from as the experts to it, and then we printed it to the ground. So it's like, if you think of the, let's say, the Mayan calendar and the different yugas, and there's an overlap of a 5,000 year period and another 5,000 year period. And let's say the solar messiahs is that you have the age of the ram and the age of the bull and the age of the Pisces, and for you have the Jesus as a symbol or a different one, and then that solar messiah needs to die, and there's going to be an overlap, and from that point on, we have, because the next age, the age of Aquarius comes now in 2150. So Christianity and the Jesus as a solar messiah will come to an end in 2150, but then likely his myth and legacy will still carry on for some time before the new one arises. So we had in crypto art, the postmodern experts were overlapping to the other side of things, and now I'm hoping in this new cycle we're really starting to see the ordinals and the different kinds of methods that are gonna maybe gonna tilt towards this telos of things altogether. But one thing that is I think is very helpful, and this will be so supernatural for you to understand, is that now that you look at something like the Hollywood elite, mm-hmm. and how badly they're suffering, and when they now realize that how little influence they actually have with their kind of rantings and not understanding where we are, you have some people like, let's say, Matthew McConaughey, who embraced the podcasting world because he's actually a substantial person. He has a lot to
actor.
The life, and there's things that he has to share, so he can actually be on a podcast to talk about things for a couple of hours without demystifying his persona or himself as an actor altogether. I think all artists of substance are going to be living through the AI. They're going to be living through this chaos. They're the ones who've done the work, again, for them to have an authentic point of view and a perspective, and you can question their character, and while they're not perfect, and they'll have embarrassing moments and whatever else, you can trust them because they are going to show up as themselves into a podcast like this and have this kind of discussion, and then you might disagree or agree, but you can't be that person unless if you've done the work. Otherwise you'll be a Kamala Harris who can't go on the Joe Rogan podcast because her whole narrative is going to fucking collapse after the first hour, and then she'll come across as the person that she actually is. So
no person.
There's like, no, it's so obvious, and then someone's going to say, oh, you're just hate a woman president. No, if Tulsi would have been the Democratic presidential candidate, well, it would have been a hard thing in between RFK and her, but I have no problem voting for a woman if she would have been a woman of color and like all of these different kinds of things. She just would have been one that is actually competent and a great leader. So anyway, annoying, but that's the podcasting realm has really, I think that's the one that saved humanity. It was the bravery of comedians being cool enough to go after the interviews of Trump and RFK and Vivek and all those kinds of things, because I think this was cool for me to realize that the because the sacred clown idea that, you know, the king has to have the sacred clown in the court so that people know that he doesn't take himself too seriously. It's always the tyrants that kill the comedians first, and this is why you know that the whole democratic machine is evil, because they went after the comedians. Then it's really difficult to think that Trump is a dictator or RFK or any of them, because they got vouched in by the sacred clowns.
Yeah.
You're cool enough to come and hang with us, you know, so you can't be too evil if we authentically want to be around you. So in this way, the mythological, archetypal, whatever, all of the things that people think that are just irrelevant or whatever, that's in action what happens with that kind of a thing, of how powerful that is. And I actually have my hand hair sticking out just saying that thing, you know. But podcasting saved the world, I think.
Yeah, and I think you also what you said with the sacred clown. I think the jester or the joker in mythology, like the Loki, or you know, any of the other mythological representatives. I think, you know, Elon and Trump, you know, they perfectly fit the bill of sort of the jester, like the Lokis of mythology, right? They are ephemeral. Hard to pin down. You know, they say one thing and do another thing. They always keep you on the, you know, you're off balance, right? These yeah, it always made me think of those mythological characters. So it's kind of ironic that they I think, you know, what you also say, like you need to have like a thick skin in order to survive the slings and arrows that they throw at you. And I think sort of the mercurial character of Trump and Elon, who can sort of vibe with the slings and arrows and actually turn them to their advantage, right? That is, of course, also a big part of, you know, what helped them win, you know, and of course the squirrel. But
yeah, the squirrel was a touch of God.
It was brilliant. But, you know, yeah, anyway, we can talk for hours and hours. Let's wrap it up. I think we're both tired.
Yeah.
Let's end with the squirrel. Yeah, good luck with the Department of Artistic Freedom. I think it will be. It's a great idea, and I hope it will take off. I also like ordinals and Bitcoin, so that's a perfect combination. And I love your art. And you're always welcome to come back on. So.
Thank you, brother. Always a pleasure. You'll find the Department of Artistic Freedom on my Twitter at Art by Vesa, VESA, and then it's on my homepage as well, artforcrypto.com. So essentially, it's 100 ordinals, 369,000 sats, a nod to Tesla, and you know, I thought it has to cost something. In order for people to take it seriously enough to become a part of it. But it's the open call for the first 100 to come and join and create this. I don't know what it's going to be. The first pragmatic thing was to have a community that helps artists under cancellation threats, and especially if it's utter bullshit, you know, so that there would be more, because courage is infectious, you know. And that's what it's meant to be. We do need each other. We do need community, and we do need courage, and we do need to help each other out. And you know, this could be something that comes to people's defense, and it would be a joint bonding thing with the same kind of idea that we're sick of being intimidated. We're sick of being people who walk on eggshells. And I personally didn't get to become an artist and stay an artist and do all of this hard work to be controlled by fucking bureaucrats. So fuck these people and let's be artists.
Amen to that. And let's end on that note. Let's do another one soon, and I wish you all the best, Vesa.
Cheers, bro. All right, later.
Take care.